Welcome to the Content Champion podcast. We provide the training and tools to help you become a content marketing champion in your online business. Introducing your host, the content champion himself, Loz James.
Hi guys, welcome to the Content Champion podcast. Thanks for listening. Now I'm really excited because this is episode number 2 in the authority content experiment, where you can watch over my shoulder as I build a niche authority site from scratch. So if you want to follow me on this ACE journey, just simply go to contentchampion.com/ACE and sign up for regular updates there. Now, last time we went over sort of an introduction and overview to the whole project, and this time we're going to delve down into why I've chosen the yoga niche and do a bit of a research analysis into the niche and the market size and how I'm going to approach this market with my site. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, I'm going to split this into 8 sections. First, look at the personal reasons why I'm entering this niche and how that reflects on the site that I'm going to build. Second, look at some keyword research. Third, some sort of social aspects of social sharing and the buzz that's generated by some of the content in the marketplace. Then number 4, we're going to look at the market size of the yoga niche for 2016. Number 5, have a look at some of the types of products that are selling really well that I can also sell through my blog. Number 6, going to have a look at the competition, some of the authority sites already out there. Could be a bit daunting. Some of the ones I found are amazing, but competition's always a good thing, of course. Number 7, have a look at some of the content on those sites, what they're doing. You know, have they got email lists? Look at their social media communities and things like that, just to see what we're up against. And then number 8, in extension to that, I'm going to look at what I'm going to do to approach the yoga niche and how I'm going to set out my site and some general rules behind that. And then in the next episode of the ACE project, we're going to have a look at the site setup and some of the initial content that we're already building, we're already creating to go onto that site. Okay, section 1. This is a look into the personal reasons of why I've decided to set up a site in the yoga niche. Now, obviously, you don't need to be passionate about your niche. You don't need to be necessarily personally interested in it to make money from an authority site within that sector. Me personally, I think it helps. I'm going to actually be the face of this site. So, you know, there is a bit of a personal story behind it. And that story is this. My wife's been doing yoga for about 10, 11 years now, and she swears by it. She is perhaps representative of someone who gets all the health benefits that represents the ideal sort of avatar in the marketplace. She does it for increased flexibility. She does it in alignment with other exercises like running and swimming. She does it for general health reasons. She ties it in with diet expectations as well and how that reflects upon what she eats. She also ties in with all the products that she purchases in terms of sustaining her yoga interests. So we might have things like yoga mats and yoga balls and trainers and training clothing and all that type of yoga equipment that is so popular. So she's fairly representative of someone within the niche. And she's also obviously a woman, so that represents, the fact that, over 2/3 of people in America, which is our target audience area, who practice yoga are female. My personal take on this is that I have slight arthritis that sort of manifests itself with pains in my toes and my left knee. So for the last sort of 20 years or so, I've done weights for strength conditioning. And I currently do something called the 5x5 program, which involves really heavy free weights and a weights cage, which I've got in my shed. And that works wonders. But my wife's been saying to me, look, you need to be doing yoga to increase that, flexibility, give yourself added flexibility. So I'm actually going to be taking up yoga for the first time in conjunction with running this blog. So I'm going to put my name behind it, my face behind it, and say, this is something that I'm actually physically doing myself. And that can factor into the branding of the blog and the direction I take it in, just to give a bit more authority and trust behind it and a bit more sort of coherence to the whole approach. So yeah, there is a bit of a personal reason behind setting up the blog as I am, and you don't have to do this. You can use a fake avatar if you like, but I've chosen to front the site, as it were, with my real personality and character and everything that comes out of that. And there's a very good reason for that, which I'll touch upon again later. There might be the possibility for doing some podcasting within this niche, because that's an area that I've identified as something that could set my brand and my yoga blog apart. Not a lot of people are doing this very well. Obviously, I've got podcasting experience, so that's something I want to do. So that's why I want to be doing it myself. Okay, keyword research, section 2. Just a look around in some of the standard tools that we use. I've been using the Google Keyword Planner and also Longtail Pro, Spencer Hawes product, and various other just resources like SpyFu and tools like that, just to dig down into the latest sort of figures on the keywords that are sort of trending and getting the most traffic, to get an idea of the size of the yoga sector. So I'm going to put some screenshots of all this stuff I talk about on the blog. So go and have a look on the blog as well when you've listened to the podcast, if you're listening to this on iTunes, and sign up and join the project as well. But the yoga niche across the States, we're basically looking at hundreds and hundreds of thousands of monthly searches. The average monthly search for the yoga term itself is nearly 250,000. And then coming into that, you've got all the different types of yoga, Bikram yoga, you've got the products that come from that, like yoga mats, yoga clothes. You've got yoga for different types of market sectors, yoga for beginners. All of these search terms are getting tens and hundreds of thousands of monthly searches, which bodes very well for monetizing the niche. It's obviously there's obviously money to be had in the niche. Also, there's a lot of people spending money on AdWords advertising, a lot of competition there, which is a great thing, because it proves that there's certainly a lot of money to be hoovered up if we choose some of the right keywords for the content that we're going to produce and then promote it actively. So that was really heartening. I then went across from the Google Planner tool to the SpyFu tool and just had a look at some of the monthly searches in the States. This data differed a bit, which is why it's also good to look at different tools. It was a bit lower, but it gave us a figure of around about 200,000 monthly searches just for the yoga term, a global search of over 800,000 a month, and then it goes into different figures like average cost per click for broad phrase and exact match on the yoga term, which is 51 cents. And then the daily costs being spent across the niche, broad $768, phrase $489, exact down to $37. So people are spending a lot of money. Monthly cost $23,000 for broad match yoga terms, anything down to just over $1,000 for exact match terms. 26 advertisers in the last 12 months on this exact term. It gives you an idea that there are a lot of people consistently, and if you go and look at the ads, some of these ads have run for a long time. So there are a lot of people and companies consistently advertising yoga products using yoga, the main keyword, and subsidiary keywords like yoga training DVDs, organic yoga clothing, yoga instruction videos, yoga classes online, yoga, yogi clothing, all this type of thing. So even some of the terms that don't have that much sort of natural traffic are still getting advertised upon with AdWords. So there's a massive amount of money to be made based on the keyword research within this niche. And I've also done some keyword research into specific content pieces that I'm already creating for the blog. That will be in the next podcast, but it's relatively straightforward within this niche to dig down into some amazing sets of keywords, and I know that Chris Lee at Rank Excel talks about doing this really successfully, is trying to get in a lot of related keywords with relatively high search numbers, even though they're competitive, getting a lot of those keywords into a long form piece of content and then promoting it so that you rank for all those terms and the long tail derivations of those terms within one page. And that's what I'm going to try and be doing with my, long form articles. And then I'm also going to have some shorter form reviews, but I'll go into that later on. So there's basically plenty of keywords to play with a lot of commercial search intent and then a lot of informational how-to terms as well. People looking to find out different aspects of yoga, not necessarily commercial searches, which might be harder to compete with. But certainly there's enough to drive traffic in to my new site using some of those education-based, explorative, how-to, question-asking type terms that really can generate quite a lot of traffic. And then hopefully we can, later on, as the site gains authority, start to rank for some of those larger, more commercial terms as well, when I hope the whole thing should explode. He says hopefully. Okay. That's a bit of an insight into the keywords, giving an insight into the size of the market. The yoga niche is massive, and there is loads and loads you can do with it in terms of all the keywords that we've talked about and how that will feed into the content we create. So I'm not worried about that. I've satisfied myself that the market can sustain it. Number 3, we're going to talk about some of the social sharing that goes on in the niche, because that's also a good indicator of what exactly is going on. And social media is obviously more and more important. And a lot of this stuff will perhaps become shareable on social first, and then we'll add in more backlinks to it, and it will, get its Google rankings, its organic traffic later. So I've included a screenshot as well on the blog of just a quick search on BuzzSumo, looking at the type of content that is being shared in this niche. And the authoritative sites in the niche that are publishing, share-worthy long-form content with multimedia in it and everything else, they are getting hundreds of thousands of shares on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, Pinterest, across the board. Now, there's a load you can obviously do with Pinterest in this niche because it's very visual. But also, what surprised me about this was that it isn't just Facebook and Twitter where people are getting a lot of shares for their content, but also, in some instances, Google Plus is doing very well. And again, Pinterest is one that I'm going to look to sort of focus on, because there is a ton of stuff you can do with really visual content for yoga poses. There's yoga equipment, and there's lots of ideas I've got for list posts, the type of perhaps post that's visually based, list posts like John Dexter does at Fat Stacks blog. So there's a ton of things you can do, but the long and short of it is that there are a lot of newsworthy and a lot of share-worthy content pieces being created in the yoga niche. And if they're on authoritative sites, as the search on BuzzSumo will show you, some of them are getting, 500,000 shares. And even on smaller authority sites, there is the shares in the hundreds and the thousands. So this again bodes well. Just quick, simple checks, but it's just all persuading me in terms of the social media buzz created in the yoga industry for certain types of content. It's all persuading me that this is a good niche to go into. So that's another box ticked. Part 4. Let's have a look at the market size of the yoga niche in 2016. A couple of years ago, Stuart Walker on the excellent Niche Hacks blog did a superb report, niche hack report, on the yoga sector. And I'll put a link to that on the blog as well to go and have a look at, because it's really worth looking at. It really helped me in deciding about this niche. So, I totally recommend his site. I've bought some of his products. Fantastic resource. However, 2 years, things have moved on, and there's particularly another piece of research, the Yoga in America study conducted by the Yoga Journal and Yoga Alliance, which I'll put a link to as well. This is a 2016 study, and it brings things up to date a bit from this excellent report that Stuart did a couple of years ago. So just some highlights that come out of this study. Basically, there are nearly 37 million people who do yoga in the States, and that's up from 20 million in 2012. And just over a third of Americans say they're pretty likely to get involved in yoga in the next 12 months. And that equates to about 80 million people. Also, we touched on this earlier on, 72% of people that do yoga are female and 28% are men. That's up a bit from a couple of years ago as well. So more men are becoming involved in it. And particularly in relation to this, people that do yoga, both men and women, are tending to supplement it with other forms of exercise, like I'm doing with my weights. Other people do swimming and cycling and running, and they do yoga as well. So in terms of the demographics, you've got about 43% of the people doing yoga are 30 to 49-year-olds. And then 38% are aged 50 plus. And the lowest of all, which is quite surprising, only 19% of people doing yoga are 18 to 29 years of age. I thought that had been around the other way. So it just shows perhaps the demographic of the silver surfer, the saga as we call it in the UK, the older generation coming up to retirement. They're perhaps more worried about their health and want to get involved in yoga because it's low impact and it has really good, results for your whole mental and physical and spiritual well-being and all that sort of stuff. So perhaps the niche site for older people doing yoga is something that could be focused on, or could be a category or section for that on the site. And I know from my research that there are some blogs that actually just target this whole niche. Also, that demographic 50 plus have got a lot of money because they've benefited from the last sort of 20 years globally in the States and in the UK of house price inflation, house prices going up in value. So they may have bought a house, when they were in their 20s that's gone up much more in value than, say, a house would today. So those people tend to have 50 plus quite a lot of disposable income. Okay, about 75% of people in the US have been doing yoga for 5 or fewer years. So people are relatively new to this. And then we have a look at, the reasons why people start yoga. And it's roughly 61% flexibility, stress relief 56%, 49% for general fitness, and then improve overall health is 49%, and then physical fitness is 44%. What interests me about this research from the 2016 Yoga in America study, which I'll link to as well on the blog, another thing that really interests me about this research is that the results of yoga across the board are people, between 73 and 86% of people to different degrees have experienced a feeling of being physically stronger and report a sense of mental and physical clarity from doing yoga. So if we're in the business of selling results, the net result of doing yoga is all of these things: increased flexibility, increased overall health, weight loss, increased strength. So all these results that people really want to make themselves look better, quite fundamental on a fundamental level, are all covered by yoga. So that's very interesting as well in terms of how you approach content. Now, very, very interestingly, finally on this market size sort of section, obviously this research proves that yoga niche is a fantastic one to go into. What interests me from a commercial perspective is two things that come out of this. Firstly, students spend over $16 billion a year on equipment, gear and training or classes in the yoga sector. And that's up from $10 billion in 2012. So the niche is growing. Okay. Secondly, for every person that's currently a yoga teacher, there are 2 more who are interested in becoming a yoga teacher. So that's a fantastic market opportunity in itself. So if you have an ebook or some sort of product or course or video series or whatever, how to become a yoga teacher or how to market yourself, how to market your yoga teaching business or whatever it is, there's so many opportunities for subsections of future products and services you could provide in this sector that just all bodes very well. And I would add in here something that I was going to mention earlier on about Google Trends. we were saying that, we're comparing a market analysis from a couple of years ago to a market analysis now and what's changed. And you can see that doing a search just on the yoga term, yoga keyword in Google Trends shows you that, over the last couple of years, the market's continued to grow. There's been an uplift, notably 2011 to 2015, but also since 2005, the interest in the yoga niche to today has broadly doubled. So more and more people in America and globally indeed are getting interested in yoga. And that bodes very well because it's quite a long period of time, a decade, and it's just going up and up and up and up steadily. So that's, is another reason why when you're choosing a niche, you can look ahead and say, is this going to be sustainable in the long term? And this definitely is. Interestingly, then, there's also some regional interest data that comes out of this. And places like the top countries are Canada, Singapore, United States, Australia, India, Ireland and New Zealand, where we've got interest growing over time. So United States is the third on this list, which is our market. So there's, sustainable growth of interest. But other countries such as Singapore and Canada and India itself, the home of yoga, India has an increased interest in yoga as well, growing over the last few years. So all of that is fascinating. We can feed that into the mix just to tick another box that the market can sustain all this business and all these authority sites that are being created within the sector.
You're listening to the Content Champion podcast, showcasing the training and tools you need to become a content marketing champion in your online business.
Number 5, some of the products. Look at the sort of research into the products that are being sold in the yoga niche. Now, I'm going to predominantly focus on Amazon and probably AdSense, maybe a bit of ClickBank products, whatever suggests themselves as being a lucrative opportunity. But I've done Amazon sites in the past. I've made good money from them, so I'm quite comfortable in that sort of area. I've done some research on Amazon, and there's obviously a ton of yoga products, books, yoga mats, yoga towels, yoga clothing, yoga DVDs, yoga training, all that type of stuff available on Amazon. But in particular, I've zeroed down into 2 types of products that I'm going to start selling immediately. And these will be reflected in the content I put on the blog and inform that content. One is yoga mats, because that's one of the top searches. And one is yoga balls. They're sometimes called, exercise balls or medicine balls or whatever they're called as well. But yoga balls and yoga mats are 2 things that people seem to want the most because it ties in with their training, and when they're going to classes and stuff like that, they need a yoga mat to go. And also things like people use yoga balls for training to, improve their posture and things like that. So if you dig down into the keyword research and then look at some of the products, you can get an idea of the sort of things that you can promote. But then after those first 2, yoga mats and yoga balls, there's then yoga DVDs and yoga clothing and all sorts of yoga books from different areas of yoga, different types of yoga, the spirituality element that I want to bring into my blog, more on that later. So there's a ton of things, and it also relates as well to diet. I know my wife is keen on, eating healthily, and that's something that goes with her training and her yoga practice. So there's other products there that we could go into categorizing for, healthy eating and everything else that goes with it. So while I'm going to focus on just a couple of products up front, there is a ton of available, really high selling, loads of great reviews, loads of great top selling products that, although in the past I always used to choose things over $100, some of these are less than that. I think the numbers they're selling in and the size of the market can sustain a blog that sells Amazon products at slightly lower value, slightly lower prices than I would normally be happy with. I've normally gone for stuff that's, over $100 to $300 and done very well out of that in terms of commissions. But I think that this niche is bigger than I've ever gone into before. So, I think a sort of $50, $60 product can be sustained. And some of those yoga mats and yoga balls fall into that sort of price range. So that's what I'm going to start off with initially. I'll just stick a couple of screenshots in of what I've been looking at on Amazon. That will tie into my email list as I build out the site. I'm going to instantly have some value emails going out, giving some tips about yoga poses, different types of yoga, some of the history about yoga and yoga training. And then I'm going to drop in some emails and also some ads on the site that link through to some of those yoga mat and yoga ball products and little reviews of those as well. Okay, number 6, look at the sort of competition in terms of the sites out there. What type of sites are we looking at? Well, I've already hinted that there are loads of different sub-markets within yoga. So there are a ton of authoritative, great-looking, well-made sites with big social media followings, growing email lists with great email giveaways, with fantastically produced, great-looking long-form content that are doing everything right in terms of content marketing. And I looked up just a simple list of, one of those top 50 or top 100 yoga blogs of 2016, just to have a look at what's out there. And there are all sorts of niche sites in the yoga sector. There's a great site called Curvy Yoga. And this lady's doing a fantastic podcast on there, which is doing very well, which got me thinking about podcasting within the sector. There's also the Spirit Voyage blog for specific type Kundalini yoga and the practice of that and meditation. There's the Daily Cup of Yoga, which is a sort of inspiring posts on yoga and spirituality and things that come out of that. Then there's sort of stalwart sites like the Yogi Times, art, recipe and travel articles, all with that sort of yoga bent to it. And then there are other sites that go through, sort of personal journey with yoga. So there's a good one, Tara Stiles, who talks about how, yoga makes you feel better. And she gives tips for yoga poses and healthy recipes and things like that. And then we've got Ali Flavio at the Journey Junkie, who's doing a similar sort of things, giving her thoughts on yoga, travel, lifestyle. And she's also got a great photographic element to her blog. I also mentioned the older demographic there. There's a great blog called The Daily Downward Dog. The blog is really geared to people practicing yoga over 40, talking about relieving certain things like back pain and making yoga more accessible to people. And then there's other notable blogs like the Yoga blog and the Little Flower Yoga blog, all of which I'll link to in the show notes here. But they're all looking at yoga from the point of view of whether it's lifestyle, a specific sub-demographic, a specific age group. They're tying in photography, recipes. Maybe they're doing yoga for people in a certain weight demographic or, different styles of yoga. There's every single niche blog you can think of because, as we've proved, the market can sustain it. But what's very interesting about this is the people doing well, the sites, when you look at, go into a tool like Ahrefs or the Moz Site Explorer and you look at the sites that are doing well, they've all been building their links. They all have extremely share-worthy, well-presented long-form content. As I say, they've got all their ducks in a row when it comes to their internet marketing 101 essentials, like building the email list and having some great giveaways. And they are selling a variety of products. They might be selling courses, they might be selling services and a mixture of all of those products and services and training courses. So that really feeds into step 7, the type of content that they're putting on there. As I said, it is well produced. It does look great. There's a lot of multimedia going on these sites. A lot of, really great original photography. A lot of really great original videos. A lot of really great original training, with all the poses in it. There are also a lot of extended list posts, which is something I'm going to be doing some of. And again, within this mixture of authority content, there is an increasing number of people who are looking at doing some podcasting, although that seems to be a minority of the overall sites available within the niche. So, as I said at the beginning, I do podcasting. I love podcasting. It's something I think I'm fairly good at. The reason I want to front up the blog itself is because I might want to start a podcast in future. If we are skyscrapering, using the skyscraper technique from Brian Dean at Backlinko, if we're to better some of this content, then we're going to have to be at the top of our game. That is slightly daunting, especially when we're going to be outsourcing everything, because I've got client work to do and the Content Champion podcast and other things. That is slightly daunting in that, we're going to have to enter this niche with our eyes open. And if we're just producing crappy, half-assed content and not promoting it very well, we will sink without a trace. However, there is money to be made if we do this all properly. So that gives me a lot of hope for what I'm doing, a lot of excitement with the ACE project in general. So number 8, how I'm going to approach the niche. My aim with this, because there's a huge subsection here that I've identified in my research of the kind of spiritual side, the self-help side, the lifestyle side, this sort of feel-good self-help spirituality side of things, which is very positive, which means you can share some great images and some uplifting positive stuff that will do really well on social media, all that side of it. That is going to be the approach I take with my yoga blog. So that'll be the branding will feed into that side of things as well. So although I'll have all the product reviews and be selling stuff through Amazon and selling stuff through probably AdSense ads and looking at other affiliate products on ClickBank, basically where there's a ton of stuff available, I'm going to be, really focusing in on that spirituality lifestyle side of things as well, because it ties in with the net result of what my wife, bring it back to the beginning, gets out of yoga, and what a lot of these people within that target audience we talked about get out of yoga, which is their problem is solved, the answer to their questions, the solution we're providing for them, their end goal is to be more holistically healthy and feel better about themselves and be stronger, be more flexible, be fitter, and to eat more healthily. And that all ties in with that sort of yoga sub-story. So I want my blog, my branding to feed into that, because I think that will do very well commercially once I've built up some trust and authority. So what does this mean in practice? Well, it means great looking site, which we're building at the moment, a strong brand, a strong social media presence that reflects that brand and that messaging. And it also means that I'm going to be the personal face of the blog, because I want to do the podcast that I talked about potentially in future. And yeah, it means long form content with a lot of multimedia in it that's well produced, that looks great. It means starting that email list straight away and building that up and offering some really great lead magnets to get people signing up to that from the beginning, and then getting that feedback from that email list as to what they perceive the brand as and what sort of products and services they want to buy and end up buying through the site. So I can potentially build a course in future to go with that. And then also, looking at promoting that content over time. I know I'm going to have to build some good quality links in here, do a lot of outreach. And even though I will have shorter 500 to 1,000 word reviews on the site, I'm also going to have some pillar content that's sort of 2,000 words plus to move the needle with organic search, as well as having the stuff that's really immediately shareable on social media. So there's a lot to do. I didn't say this was going to be easy, but it is a very, very promising and a very lucrative niche to go into. It would worry me more at this stage if I'd gone in, had a look at the research, and it had told me that the market couldn't sustain another authority site. So I'm definitely going to plow ahead with all this. And if you want to join me, just go to contentchampion.com/ACE and join the mailing list there. And you can follow along with the project. You'll be first to hear about the new updates as and when I publish them. So that's it for this time. I hope you enjoyed that delve down into the yoga niche. I'll put all the resources in the show notes and all the screenshots and everything else, and there'll be a transcript of this podcast on there as well. So until next time, all that remains to say is thanks very much for listening, and I wish you all the best of luck with everything in future, especially if you're following the ACE project.
You've been listening to the Content Champion podcast, available at contentchampion.com and on iTunes. Until next time, thanks for listening.